The Shardwood Chronicles, Rise of the Wildborn.
Chapter 1. The Forge of Destiny. The rhythmic clang of hammer on metal echoed through Embergrove, a sound as familiar to Rynn as the rustle of the redwoods swaying above. Her arms ached as she worked the bellows, her uncle's gruff commands cutting through the forge's heat. "Steady, Rynn, we need the edge clean, not melted," Uncle Doran barked, his ears twitching as the iron began to glow. Rynn wiped soot from her brow, her tail flicking behind her in annoyance. "I've got it! Just keep hammering!" Doran grunted, his scarred paws gripping the tongs as he withdrew the blade and set it on the anvil. "If you've got it, prove it. Pass me the quenching oil." She turned to fetch the oil when the ground trembled beneath her feet. A low, guttural rumble filled the air, vibrating through the forge walls and silencing the village's usual bustle. "What in Alarian's name?" Doran began, but the rest of his words were drowned out by a deafening roar. Rynn bolted to the doorway, her heart pounding as she looked skyward. Against the serene blue of the late morning, a massive shadow swept over the village. Velrax, his obsidian scales gleaming like shards of night, spiraled downward, smoke and flame trailing in his wake. Villagers screamed as fire engulfed the central square, turning the wooden statue of Alarian to ash in an instant. Velrax landed with a thunderous crash, his wings sending debris flying. His massive, glowing eyes surveyed the scattering villagers with cruel amusement. "Your tribute is overdue, mortals!" Velrax's voice boomed, deep and resonant, shaking the very air. "Shall I burn your insolence into memory, or will you offer something of worth?" Rynn ducked back into the forge, her breath catching in her throat. Doran grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice low but urgent. "The village guard will deal with this." Rynn's ears flattened as she peeked through the window. The guard? A handful of foxes and squirrels armed with pitchforks wouldn't last a heartbeat against a dragon. "I'm not staying here while he destroys everything," Rynn hissed. She grabbed the half-finished blade from the anvil, her paws trembling as she felt its weight. "And what will you do, child? Run out there and poke him in the eye?" Doran snapped. Rynn's jaw clenched. "If we don't distract him, the whole village will burn." Doran hesitated, his gaze softening for a moment. He released her arm with a sigh. "If you're going to be reckless, at least don't die doing it." She grabbed a pouch of oil and a torch from the forge wall, shoving them into her satchel. Without waiting for further protests, she darted out into the chaos. Chapter 2. The Firestorm. The square was unrecognizable. Smoke hung heavy in the air, choking her as she navigated through the rubble. Villagers fled in every direction, their cries mingling with the crackling of flames. Velrax prowled through the destruction, his claws carving deep furrows into the cobblestones. "Where is your tribute?" he growled, snapping his jaws at a fleeing squirrel. Rynn's mind raced. If she could create a distraction, even for a moment, it might give the villagers time to escape. She spotted the forge's coal pile near the center of the square, still smoldering. With shaking hands, she poured oil onto the coals and lit the torch. The fire roared to life, and she grabbed a nearby pot, throwing it into the flames to create a deafening clang. "Hey, lizard breath!" she yelled, her voice cracking but loud enough to echo through the square. Velrax's head snapped toward her, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You dare!" Before he could finish, Rynn threw another pot, this one filled with molten slag, directly at his foreclaw. It shattered, spraying glowing embers across his scales. Velrax roared in fury, rearing back and whipping his tail through the air. Rynn dove behind a fallen wagon as the tail slammed into the ground, splintering wood and stone. Her ears rang from the impact, but she forced herself to move, scrambling toward another pile of debris. "You insolent whelp!" Velrax snarled, his nostrils flaring as he inhaled. Flames began to build in his throat, the glow casting long shadows around the square. Rynn's pulse quickened. She hadn't thought this far ahead. The molten slag hadn't even scratched him. Just as Velrax unleashed a torrent of fire, a blur of gray and steel charged into the fray. Sir Thalos, his armor dented but gleaming in the sunlight, raised his shield and braced against the inferno. The flames split around him, licking at the edges of his black cloak, but leaving him unharmed. "Get clear!" he barked over the roar of fire, his voice steady and commanding. Rynn hesitated, her legs frozen beneath her. She watched as Thalos leapt forward, slashing at Velrax's exposed flank with his longsword. The blade carved a shallow gash, earning a roar of pain from the dragon. "Move!" Thalos shouted again, this time with more force. Rynn finally found her footing and sprinted toward the edge of the square. Behind her, Velrax lashed out with his tail, narrowly missing Thalos as the knight ducked and rolled. Velrax growled, his wings unfurling as he prepared to take flight. "You've earned my attention, knight, but this is far from over." With a powerful beat of his wings, Velrax launched himself skyward, flames trailing in his wake. His roar echoed long after he disappeared into the horizon. Rynn collapsed against a charred wall, her chest heaving. The square was silent now, save for the crackling of dying flames. Thalos approached her, his golden eyes stern. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, sheathing his sword. "That was the most reckless, foolish thing I've seen in years." She met his gaze, defiance flaring in her amber eyes. "And yet, here we are. The village is still standing." Thalos's expression softened, just slightly. "You have courage, I'll grant you that. But courage without caution will get you killed." As the villagers began to emerge from their hiding places, Rynn looked up at the sky, her heart heavy. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Chapter 3: The Call of the Wild. The woods beyond Embergrove were eerily silent. The usual chatter of birds and rustle of small creatures had vanished, leaving only the occasional crack of a burnt branch underfoot. Smoke clung to the air, heavy and acrid, as Rynn picked her way through the scorched underbrush. Her amber eyes scanned the ruined forest, searching for any survivors. She had told herself she was looking for injured villagers or trapped animals, but deep down she felt something else. An unshakable pull, like a faint whisper urging her deeper into the charred remains. "Rynn!" Sir Thalos's voice rang out behind her. She turned to see him striding toward her, his dented armor catching the dim light filtering through the smoke. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his tone sharp. "I'm fine," she replied, brushing ash from her green cloak. "I'm just checking for anyone who might need help." Thalos's eyes narrowed. "The villagers are accounted for. Whatever you're looking for, it isn't here." She hesitated, the pull drawing her further ahead. "I'll just be a moment. Go back to the village if you want." His sigh was long and full of irritation, but he didn't leave. Instead, he followed her, his boots crunching against the blackened ground. The pull grew stronger as they walked, and Rynn found herself moving faster, her ears pricked for any sign of life. Then, amid the scorched roots of a massive redwood, she saw it. A faint glow, soft and pulsating, like a heartbeat. "Wait!" she whispered, holding out a hand to stop Thalos. She crouched low and crawled closer. The glow came from a mound of ash nestled at the base of the tree. As she brushed the debris aside, her breath caught in her throat. It was an egg, about the size of her head, its surface smooth and pearlescent. The glow emanated from within, flickering softly, like a flame trapped beneath a thin shell. Thalos's voice was sharp behind her. "Step away from it, Rynn." She ignored him, her paws trembling as she reached out to touch the egg. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, a wave of warmth spread through her, filling her chest with a strange mix of awe and sorrow. "It's alive," she whispered, turning to look at Thalos. His expression darkened, and he drew his sword. Not for long. That is no ordinary egg. It's Wildborn. Rynn rose to her feet, instinctively stepping between him and the egg. You don't know that! Thalos's jaw tightened. I've seen enough to know what that thing will become. A creature of fire and chaos, just like the dragon that attacked your village. It's not Velrax, Rynn said, her voice rising. It hasn't done anything wrong. Yet. His golden eyes bored into hers. You don't understand the danger, Rynn. Wyverns are not pets or companions. They're weapons, tools of destruction. If you let it live, you're gambling with every life in Shardwood. Rynn's hands balled into fists. So we destroy it now, without giving it a chance? Is that the kind of knight you are? The tension hung thick between them, but before Thalos could reply, the egg trembled. Both of them froze, their eyes snapping to the glowing shell. A faint crack appeared along the surface, glowing brighter as it spread. Rynn crouched again, her heart pounding as the egg began to splinter. Rynn! Thalos warned, his grip tightening on his sword. She ignored him, her focus entirely on the creature emerging from the egg. The shell broke apart in pieces, revealing a small, trembling figure. It was a wyvern, its emerald scales shimmering faintly in the dim light. Its translucent wings, streaked with veins of silver, unfolded slowly, still wet from the egg's interior. The creature blinked up at her with golden eyes, wide and curious, before letting out a soft, chirping sound. Rynn's heart ached at the sight of the tiny creature, its golden eyes, so full of curiosity and innocence, locked onto hers. She couldn't look away. Hey there, she whispered, her voice soft and trembling. Slowly, she extended her paw toward it. The wyvern hesitated, then took a tentative step forward, placing one clawed foot against her palm. A warmth spread through her again, deeper this time, like a spark catching in her chest. She felt connected. Rynn! Thalos's voice came again, cold and commanding. Move away from it, now. She glanced back at him, her expression defiant. It's just a baby. It's a weapon, Thalos snapped, his sword gleaming as he raised it. And one day, it will destroy everything you care about. The wyvern let out a high-pitched chirp, flinching as the blade rose. Without thinking, Rynn stepped fully in front of the creature, her arms outstretched. You're not going to hurt it, she said, her voice firm despite the fear racing through her veins. Thalos's eyes narrowed. Do you understand what you're doing? Protecting that thing could doom us all. And killing it now makes us no better than Velrax, she shot back, her voice rising. You told me to be cautious, to think before I act. Well, I am. I'm thinking this creature deserves a chance, don't you? Thalos didn't lower his sword. The tension between them stretched taut, the only sound the crackling of distant fires. Finally, he let out a low growl and sheathed his blade. You're a fool, he muttered, his golden eyes dark with frustration. But I can't stop you. Rynn let out a shaky breath of relief. She turned back to the wyvern, who was watching her with its head tilted, as though trying to understand the conflict. You're safe now, she murmured, kneeling to scoop the creature into her arms. Its scales were warm and smooth, and it nestled against her chest with a soft trill. You're making a mistake, Thalos said behind her. Maybe, she admitted, standing and cradling the wyvern close. But it's my mistake to make. The journey back to Embergrove was tense. Thalos walked a few steps ahead, his shoulders stiff, while Rynn stayed back, her arms still wrapped protectively around the wyvern. It made small, contented noises as it dozed against her. By the time they reached the village outskirts, the fires had been extinguished, but the damage was clear. Homes had been reduced to rubble, and villagers were sifting through the debris, their faces streaked with soot and tears. Rynn felt a pang of guilt. She should be helping rebuild, not carrying a wyvern that might bring more trouble. As they entered the square, Uncle Doran spotted them and hurried over. His eyes widened as he took in the creature in her arms. "Rynn, what is that?" he asked, his voice hushed. "A wyvern," Thalos answered bluntly, crossing his arms. "The girl has decided to keep it, against my better judgment." Doran's gaze darted between them, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "You brought that thing here, after what we just survived?" "It's not like Velrax," Rynn said quickly, her grip tightening on the creature. "It's just a baby. It's not dangerous." Doran looked doubtful, but he shook his head and sighed. "Whatever it is, keep it out of sight. The last thing these people need is more fear." "I will," Rynn promised. Thalos scoffed. "You're treating it like a stray pup. This isn't a game, Rynn." "It's not a game," she said, meeting his glare. "But I'm not abandoning it either." The wyvern stirred in her arms, blinking up at her with those bright golden eyes. It let out a soft chirp, as if agreeing with her. Thalos muttered something under his breath and stalked off toward the village edge. Doran watched him go, then turned back to Rynn. "You're stubborn as a mule, girl," he said, though there was a faint hint of pride in his voice. "Just be careful. That thing might be small now, but it's going to grow, and not everyone will be as understanding as me." "I'll be careful," Rynn said. As she carried the wyvern toward the remains of her home, she felt the weight of his words settling over her. She didn't know what she'd gotten herself into, but one thing was certain. Her life had changed forever. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Wildlands. The forest clearing rang with the clash of steel. Sir Thalos's blade met Rynn's borrowed sword with a sharp clang, driving her back a few steps. She stumbled, her arms trembling under the weight of the weapon, but she didn't drop it. "Again!" Thalos barked, his expression hard as flint. Rynn gritted her teeth and charged, her sword sweeping low toward his legs. Thalos sidestepped easily, his paw darting out to smack the flat of her blade. The weapon tumbled from her grip, landing in the grass with a dull thud. "That's the fourth time," he said, his tone edged with disdain. "You're predictable." Rynn glared up at him, her chest heaving. "Maybe if you didn't weigh this thing down with half a ton of iron, I'd be quicker." Thalos let out a low growl, sheathing his own sword. "A heavier blade builds strength. You can't rely on cleverness alone to survive." "I outsmarted Velrax, didn't I?" she shot back, brushing dirt from her knees. Thalos's eyes narrowed. "And if I hadn't been there, you'd be Ash. Cunning might buy you time, but discipline keeps you alive." Nearby, Kael chirped curiously, his translucent wings fluttering as he watched them. The young wyvern perched on a fallen log, tilting his head every time Rynn moved. Thalos's gaze flicked to the creature, his muzzle tightening. "And that," he said, pointing at Kael, "is another distraction you can't afford." Rynn's ears flattened. "He's not a distraction. He's part of this." "He's a liability," Thalos countered. "One you can't control." Rynn clenched her fists. "Kael saved me, twice. He's not some weapon or problem to solve. He's alive. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" For a moment, Thalos said nothing. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the breeze. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer but no less stern. "It's not about what he means to me. It's about what he could mean to others. The Wildborn have always been feared, hunted, and used. You may think you can protect him, but the world won't see him as you do." Rynn's defiance wavered, but she refused to look away. "Then I'll make them see him differently." Thalos sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "You don't understand what you're asking of yourself. Or him." Before Rynn could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the clearing. Both of them turned as Kael leapt off the log, his wings flaring. The ground beneath him had splintered, a faint scorch mark spreading outward like a spider's web. "Kael," Rynn said, stepping toward him. The wyvern's eyes glowed faintly, his chest rising and falling in short, panicked breaths. The air around him seemed to shimmer, waves of heat distorting the grass. "Stay back," Thalos ordered, his paw moving to the hilt of his sword. "No!" Rynn snapped, positioning herself between them. She crouched in front of Kael, her voice low and soothing. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." Kael's trembling slowed at the sound of her voice, his glowing eyes dimming as he leaned into her touch. The heat dissipated, leaving only the faint scorch marks as evidence. Rynn stroked Kael's neck, her heart racing. "What was that?" she asked, glancing back at Thalos. "His power," Thalos said grimly, "and a reminder of why he's dangerous." "He was scared," Rynn argued, glaring at him. "That wasn't his fault." "Fear doesn't change the damage he can do," Thalos said, his voice firm. "You're treating him like a pup, but one day he'll be as large and deadly as Velrax." Rynn's stomach twisted at his words, but she refused to let her doubt show. She looked down at Kael, who blinked up at her with tired, trusting eyes. "I won't let that happen," she murmured, more to herself than to Thalos. As the sun dipped below the treetops, casting long shadows over the clearing, the group began packing up. Kael, still weary from his outburst, curled up beside Rynn's satchel, his wings draped over his body like a blanket. Thalos sat sharpening his blade, his golden eyes flicking toward the horizon every so often. His unease was palpable, and it set Rynn on edge. "What is it?" she asked, breaking the silence. He didn't look at her as he answered. "We're being watched." Rynn's fur bristled. "What? By who?" "Not who," Thalos said, standing and scanning the tree line. "What?" A low growl rumbled through the clearing, deep and guttural, sending a chill down Rynn's spine. She reached for her sword, the weight no longer feeling as cumbersome as it had earlier. From the shadows, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, followed by another. And another. Shadow wolves. Their forms were twisted and unnatural, more smoke than flesh. They moved with an eerie silence, their paws barely disturbing the ground. Thalos stepped forward, his blade at the ready. "Stay close to me," he said. Rynn's grip tightened on her sword as she stood beside him. Kael stirred, his golden eyes snapping open as a low growl rumbled in his throat. The first wolf lunged. The shadow wolf lunged through the air, its glowing red eyes fixed on Rynn. She barely had time to raise her sword before it collided with her, the impact sending her sprawling backward. Its claws scraped against her blade, and its snarling jaws snapped inches from her face. "Get off!" she yelled, twisting desperately. Before the wolf could strike again, Thalos's blade cut through its smoky form. The creature let out a keening wail before dissipating into the air, leaving behind only a faint trace of shadow. "Focus!" Thalos barked, hauling her to her feet. More wolves emerged from the tree line, their glowing eyes cutting through the gloom like embers. They circled the clearing, their movements unnaturally fluid, as though their bodies were made of smoke and shadow. "They're everywhere," Rynn said, gripping her sword tightly. "Then stop counting and start fighting," Thalos growled, stepping in front of her. Two wolves charged simultaneously. Thalos met the first with a brutal swing of his blade, the steel slicing clean through its neck. The second wolf darted around him, heading straight for Rynn. She steadied her stance, just as he'd taught her. When the wolf pounced, she sidestepped and swung her sword in an arc. The blade connected, cutting deep into its smoky flank. The creature shrieked before crumpling to the ground, its form disintegrating. "I got one!" she shouted, a flicker of triumph in her voice. "Good," Thalos said, barely sparing her a glance as he drove his sword into another wolf. "Now get the next." The wolves weren't slowing. For everyone they struck down, 2 more seemed to take its place, their growls reverberating through the clearing. Kael let out a sharp cry from where he stood near the log. His wings flared wide, and he snapped at the nearest wolf, his small but sharp teeth catching its leg. The wolf yelped, jerking away, but another lunged at him from behind. "Kael!" Rynn cried, dashing toward him. The wolf leapt, its claws raised to strike, but Rynn reached them first. She shoved Kael out of the way and swung her sword upward, catching the wolf in midair. Its form split apart in a swirl of shadow, but the force of the attack knocked her off balance. Kael scrambled to her side, his growl deep and guttural for a creature his size. His chest began to glow faintly, the same silvery light Rynn had seen when they first met. "Stay back!" Thalos ordered, his paw moving to the hilt of his sword. "No!" Rynn snapped, positioning herself between them. She crouched in front of Kael, her voice low and soothing. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." Kael's trembling slowed at the sound of her voice, his glowing eyes dimming as he leaned into her touch. The heat dissipated, leaving only the faint scorch marks as evidence. Rynn took a deep breath, her heart racing. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the shadows pressing in around them. "Keep fighting!" Thalos shouted, cutting down another wolf that lunged for him. Rynn turned back to the fray, her grip tightening on her sword. She had to focus. They had to win. The battle raged on, the wolves relentless in their pursuit. The air grew thick with the scent of smoke and shadow, and the cries of the fallen echoed through the trees. But the tide began to turn as Kael's energy surged. With every burst of radiant light, the shadows receded, and the wolves faltered. "Keep pushing!" Thalos yelled, driving his sword into another creature. "We can do this!" The shadows flickered, and the remaining wolves hesitated. Rynn felt the energy in the air shift, a palpable sense of victory rising like a tide. Kael let out a fierce roar, his golden glow brightening as he unleashed another burst of energy. The radiant light washed over the clearing, consuming the shadows and scattering the remaining wolves. When the last wolf was vanquished, the clearing fell silent. Rynn stood panting, her heart racing as she glanced around. The shadows had dispersed, and the oppressive weight of the wildlands felt lighter. "Did we do it?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. Thalos lowered his sword, his golden eyes scanning the area. "For now," he said, his tone cautious. "But we need to move. Morvath's forces will return." Garrick nodded, hefting his warhammer. "We're not safe yet. The heart is still vulnerable." Rynn looked down at Kael, who stood proudly beside her, his golden eyes shining. "We won't let anything happen to it," she promised. As they set off again, the shadows of the wildlands began to recede in the light of the new day. But Rynn knew that their battles were far from over. They had faced darkness, but more challenges awaited them in the shadows. The heart pulsed gently in the distance, a beacon of hope in a world still shrouded in uncertainty. Chapter 5: The Wildlands' Heart. The group pressed onward, moving through the wildlands with a newfound determination. The landscape shifted beneath their feet, the cracked earth giving way to patches of vibrant green and golden light. The heart's energy pulsed faintly in the distance, guiding them toward their goal. Kael walked at Rynn's side, his golden glow illuminating their path. She could feel the strength radiating from him, a reassuring presence that helped her push through the exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. "Do you think we're close?" she asked, glancing at Thalos as he led the way. "I can feel it," Thalos replied, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "The heart is nearby, but we should remain vigilant." "Vigilant against what?" Tyla murmured, her voice edged with curiosity. "Wolves? Treants? Or maybe a giant monster just waiting to eat us?" "Focus, thief," Garrick said, his voice low. "We've made it this far. We can't afford to let our guard down now. Rynn nodded, her heart racing as she tightened her grip on Kael's harness. We'll be ready. As they ventured deeper into the wildlands, the trees began to thin, revealing a vast open space ahead. The ground was covered in bright luminescent flowers, their petals glowing softly in shades of blue and gold. Wow, Rynn breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the beauty of the grove. It's beautiful. Beautiful but dangerous, Thalos cautioned. Stay alert. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the grove, and the shadows shifted ominously. The group froze, their weapons ready, as dark shapes began to emerge from the trees. More wolves, Garrick said, his voice steady. But these were different, larger, more menacing, shadow beasts that seemed to writhe and shift like smoke given form. Their glowing red eyes locked onto the group, and a chorus of snarls echoed through the air. Here we go again, Tyla muttered, her daggers flashing as she prepared to fight. Kael, stay close, Rynn shouted, positioning herself protectively in front of him. The shadow beasts lunged, their claws raking the air as they surged forward. Thalos moved first, his sword flashing as he struck the nearest creature, sending it dissolving into smoke. Garrick swung his warhammer with a mighty roar, smashing down another beast that tried to leap at him. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, but more shadow beasts continued to pour from the trees. Don't let them surround us, Thalos barked. Keep pushing forward. Kael roared, his golden glow burning brightly as he unleashed a wave of radiant energy. The light clashed with the shadows, driving them back momentarily. Rynn fought beside him, her dagger slicing through the dark forms. We can't let them keep us here, she shouted. Tyla darted around the beasts, her movements swift and agile. She struck at their exposed sides, her daggers glinting as she fought. These things just keep coming, she yelled. Garrick smashed his warhammer into the ground, sending another wave of shock through the creatures. We have to reach the heart, he called. We can't let them stop us again. The group pressed forward, their movements coordinated as they fought through the chaos. Kael's glow surged with every burst of energy, illuminating the grove and driving back the shadows. Another howl echoed through the trees, and Rynn felt a chill run down her spine. More are coming, she said, her voice trembling. Thalos gritted his teeth. Then we fight harder. We can't let them take the heart from us. With renewed determination, the group surged toward the center of the grove. The flowers glowed brighter as they drew closer to the heart, their golden light pulsing in rhythm with Kael's energy. As they reached the base of the heart, Rynn turned to face the approaching shadow beasts. This is it, she shouted. We can end this. Kael stood proudly beside her, his golden glow intertwining with the heart's light. Together, they unleashed a final wave of radiant energy, driving the shadow beasts back and illuminating the grove in blinding brilliance. Now! Thalos commanded, and the group charged forward, pushing through the last remnants of darkness. As they reached the heart, the golden light enveloped them, wrapping them in warmth and safety. The shadows receded, and the grove fell silent once more. Rynn sank to her knees, her heart racing as she caught her breath. Kael stood beside her, his golden eyes wide and filled with determination. We did it, Rynn whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. We really did it. Thalos sheathed his sword, his golden eyes scanning the grove. But it's not over. Morvath's forces will return, and we need to prepare. Garrick nodded, his expression steady. We can't let our guard down. The heart is still vulnerable. Tyla stretched, her sharp green eyes gleaming. Well, for now, let's celebrate surviving another day. I could use a drink. Rynn smiled faintly, her heart swelling with both pride and determination. They had faced darkness together, and they would continue to do so. The heart pulsed gently in the distance, a beacon of hope guiding their way. Chapter 6. Guardians of the Heart. Days passed in the wildlands, and the heart's glow pulsed steadily, transforming the once barren landscape into a vibrant sanctuary. The air was warmer now, filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the distant sound of rustling leaves. Life was returning to the land, and with it, hope. Rynn spent her days beside Kael, learning to harness the radiant energy that flowed from the heart. They practiced together, Kael's golden glow mingling with her determination as they faced the challenges of the wildlands. "Focus, Kael," she said, her voice steady. "You have to channel the energy, not just unleash it." Kael let out a soft trill, his wings fluttering as he concentrated. His glow pulsed in rhythm with the heart's energy, and Rynn felt the warmth wash over her, filling her with strength. "Good! Now try again," she encouraged, watching as Kael unleashed a burst of radiant energy that illuminated the grove. Tyla often joined them, her playful spirit lightening the atmosphere. "You two are getting better," she said, leaning against a nearby tree. "At this rate, you might be able to take on an army." "An army?" Rynn said with a smirk. "I think we've had enough of those for a while." "Speak for yourself," Tyla replied with a wink. "I could always use another adventure." Garrick watched from a distance, his massive frame silhouetted against the golden glow of the heart. He had become a quiet guardian, his presence a steady force among the group. "Don't let your guard down," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "Morvath's forces may not be far behind." Rynn nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. "We'll be ready," she promised. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grove, Thalos joined them, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to discuss our next move," he said, his tone serious. Rynn exchanged glances with the others, their expression shifting from lightheartedness to determination. "What do you have in mind?" Tyla asked, her playful demeanor fading. Thalos stepped closer, holding the timekeeper's compass in his paw. The silver liquid within swirled with energy, its glow flickering. "The compass has been pointing to the heart of the wildlands," he said. "There's something there we need to uncover, something that could help us defeat Morvath once and for all." Rynn's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I believe there are relics left behind by the Wildborn," Thalos explained. "Artifacts that may hold the key to restoring balance and fortifying Kael's power." "Artifacts," Garrick echoed, his brow furrowing. "How do we find them?" "By following this," Thalos said, holding up the compass. "But we have to move quickly. The longer we linger, the more vulnerable we become." Rynn took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Then let's go. We'll find those relics and protect the heart." As the group prepared to leave the grove, Rynn felt a surge of determination. They had faced darkness together, and together they would continue to fight. Kael stood at her side, his golden glow steady and bright. She reached down to stroke his neck, feeling the warmth of his energy. "We'll figure this out," she whispered. "Together." With the heart pulsing steadily behind them, the group set off into the wildlands, their path illuminated by the light of Kael's glow. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the wildlands, the shadows began to shift again, the air growing heavier with each step. The compass in Thalos's paw pulsed with energy, guiding them toward their goal. But the wildlands were never without their dangers, and the path ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Chapter 7. The Relics of the Past. The journey through the wildlands was fraught with tension, the landscape shifting beneath their feet as they pressed deeper into the heart of darkness. The once vibrant patches of green began to fade, replaced by twisted trees and jagged rocks that loomed like specters. Rynn stayed close beside Kael, her heart racing as she felt the flicker of his golden glow. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice a soft murmur. Kael chirped softly, his wings fluttering as he maintained his steady pace. It was reassuring to see him holding strong, but the further they ventured, the more she felt the weight of the wildlands pressing down. The timekeeper's compass in Thalos's hand glowed faintly, the silver liquid swirling erratically. "We're getting close," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Close to what?" Tyla asked, her sharp green eyes scanning the shadows. "A particularly nasty surprise?" "More likely a relic," Thalos replied, his expression grim. "But we can't afford to be careless. Morvath's influence is still strong here." Garrick moved ahead, his massive frame cutting a path through the thick underbrush. "Stay alert. The wildlands are unpredictable." As they pressed on, the shadows grew thicker, twisting and writhing as if alive. Rynn felt a shiver run down her spine, the air growing colder with each passing moment. "Something's wrong," she muttered, glancing at Kael. The Wyvern let out a low growl, his golden eyes narrowing as he surveyed the darkness. Rynn crouched beside him, her heart pounding. "Stay close," she whispered, brushing her fingers against his warm scales. Suddenly, the ground trembled and a low growl echoed through the trees. Garrick stopped, his warhammer at the ready. "Get ready," he warned. From the shadows emerged a massive figure, a hulking beast with dark fur and glowing red eyes. It was a shadow beast, larger than any they had faced before, its form shifting like smoke. "Not again," Tyla groaned, her daggers flashing as she prepared to fight. Rynn tightened her grip on her dagger, her heart racing. "We can take it!" The beast lunged, its claws raking the air as it charged toward them. Thalos moved first, his sword flashing as he struck at the creature. The blade cut through the shadow, but the beast barely flinched. "Keep fighting!" Thalos shouted, dodging another swipe from the beast. He countered with a swift strike, aiming for its exposed flank. The blade connected, but the creature's form flickered, dissipating into a cloud of shadow before reforming a few feet away. "Garrick, flank it!" Tyla called, darting to the side. Her daggers glinted in the dim light as she moved with agility, aiming to distract the beast. Garrick nodded, hefting his warhammer as he charged toward the creature. "I'll draw its attention!" he roared, slamming his weapon into the ground. The impact sent shockwaves through the earth, staggering the shadow beast. Rynn moved closer to Kael, who stood protectively beside her, his golden glow pulsing steadily. "You ready, Kael?" she whispered, feeling the warmth of his energy seep into her. Kael let out a fierce roar, and his glow intensified. He launched himself into the air, wings beating as he unleashed a wave of radiant energy. The light struck the shadow beast, illuminating the clearing and driving back the darkness. "Now!" Thalos shouted, seizing the opportunity. He lunged forward, his sword flashing as he aimed for the beast's core. The blade sliced through the creature's form, and this time it howled, the sound echoing like thunder through the trees. Tyla took her chance, darting in to strike at the creature's legs. "We can't let it escape," she called, her eyes gleaming with determination. The shadow beast roared in pain, but even as it staggered, more shadows began to gather at the edges of the clearing. Rynn felt a chill run down her spine as she realized they were not alone. "More are coming," Garrick warned, his voice low. "We need to finish this quickly." "Kael!" Rynn shouted, her heart racing. "Can you hold them back?" Kael nodded, his golden eyes brightening as he launched another burst of radiant energy toward the beast. The light clashed with the shadows, pushing them back momentarily. But the shadow beast wasn't done. It lunged again, its claws slashing through the air as it aimed for Thalos. "Thalos, watch out!" Rynn yelled. Thalos managed to dodge, but the beast's claws grazed his arm, leaving a shallow wound that began to smoke as the dark energy seeped into his fur. He grimaced, but forced himself to stay focused. "Stay strong," he commanded, slashing at the beast again. "We can't let it overwhelm us." As the battle raged on, Rynn felt the weight of the shadows pressing against her. The air grew thicker, and the oppressive energy of the wildlands weighed heavily on her heart. "Kael, we need you," she urged, her voice urgent. "You're the only one who can drive them back." Kael let out another fierce roar, his glow pulsing brighter as he summoned all the energy he could muster. The radiant light washed over the battlefield, illuminating the darkness and pushing the shadow beast back. With a final surge of power, Kael unleashed a torrent of golden light that engulfed the shadow beast completely. The creature howled in agony, its form disintegrating into mist as the light consumed it.
"Good job, Kael!"
Rynn shouted, her heart swelling with pride. But as the last remnants of the beast faded, Rynn felt a chill crawl up her spine. The shadows around them shifted again, and she knew they weren't finished yet. "More!" Thalos yelled, his voice cutting through the tension. From the depths of the trees, a new wave of shadow beasts emerged, their forms flickering and writhing as they surged toward the group. The air crackled with dark energy, and the howls of the creatures echoed through the wildlands. "Get ready!" Garrick shouted, gripping his warhammer tightly. "We have to hold the line." Rynn tightened her grip on Kael's harness, determination flooding her veins. "We won't back down!" she shouted, her voice steady. The group formed a defensive line, weapons raised as the shadows closed in. The heart pulsed behind them, its golden glow a reminder of their purpose. With renewed resolve, they faced the oncoming tide of darkness. Kael stood at Rynn's side, his golden energy shining brightly as they prepared for the next battle. Together, they would fight to protect the heart and reclaim the wildlands. Chapter 8, The Heart's Guardian. The air crackled with tension as the shadow beasts surged forward, their glowing red eyes locked onto the group. Rynn stood firm, her heart pounding as she gripped her dagger, ready to face the onslaught. Thalos moved first, his sword flashing as he struck down the nearest beast. The blade sliced through the shadowy form, sending a wave of dark energy rippling outward. Garrick followed close behind, his warhammer crashing into the ground and sending shockwaves through the earth that scattered several of the creatures. "Stay focused!" Thalos shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't let them overwhelm us." Kael stood at Rynn's side, his golden glow pulsing steadily. With a fierce roar, he unleashed a burst of radiant energy, the light cutting through the encroaching shadows. The creatures howled in response, their forms flickering as the light burned away their darkness. "Keep pushing!" Rynn shouted, her voice steady as she struck at a beast that lunged for Kael. Her dagger sank into its smoky flank, and the creature dissolved with a shriek. But for every shadow they struck down, two more seemed to take its place. The tide of darkness pressed closer, and Rynn felt a pang of fear in her chest. "We need to break through," Garrick bellowed, his warhammer smashing into another beast. "If we don't reach the heart, we'll be trapped here." "Then let's move," Thalos ordered, his golden eyes blazing. "Follow me." With renewed determination, the group surged forward, fighting their way through the chaos. Kael's golden glow illuminated the path ahead as he unleashed wave after wave of radiant energy, pushing the shadows back momentarily. "Rynn," Thalos called, glancing back at her. "Stay close to Kael. We need to keep him protected." Rynn nodded, her heart racing as she pressed forward. She could feel the weight of the shadows closing in, but she refused to let fear take hold. They had come too far to turn back now. Finally, they reached the edge of the grove, where the heart pulsed steadily in the distance. The golden light radiated warmth, pushing back the encroaching darkness as they moved closer. "Almost there!" Rynn shouted, her voice filled with determination. But just as they reached the clearing, a massive shadow emerged from the trees. A colossal beast, its form twisting and shifting like smoke. It let out a deafening roar, the sound echoing through the grove, and the ground trembled beneath its weight. "No!" Thalos shouted, stepping forward. "We can't let it reach the heart." The creature lunged, its claws raking the air as it aimed for Kael. "Kael!" Rynn screamed, pushing forward to protect him. Kael growled, his golden glow flaring as he stood his ground, determined to defend the heart. With a fierce roar, he unleashed a torrent of radiant energy, the light colliding with the beast's dark form. The two forces clashed in a blinding explosion, sending shockwaves through the air. The beast howled in agony, but it pressed forward, its glowing eyes locked onto Kael. "Hold your ground!" Garrick shouted, swinging his warhammer at the beast's legs. Tyla darted around the creature, her daggers flashing as she aimed for its exposed sides. "We can't let it get closer!" Thalos charged in, his sword flashing as he struck at the creature's neck. The blade cut deep, but the beast barely flinched, its dark energy swirling around it like a protective barrier. "Rynn, get Kael to safety!" Thalos shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "No!" Rynn protested, her heart racing. "I won't leave him." "Do it!" Thalos commanded, his golden eyes locked onto hers. "Get him to the heart." Rynn hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect Kael and the urgency of the moment. But as the beast lunged again, its claws raking the ground, she knew she had to act. "Come on, Kael!" she shouted, grabbing his harness. "We have to go." Kael let out a fierce roar, his golden glow pulsing as they moved toward the heart. The creature surged forward, but Kael unleashed another blast of radiant energy, pushing the beast back momentarily. "Go!" Thalos yelled, cutting down another wave of shadow beasts as he fought to hold the line. Rynn sprinted toward the heart, her heart pounding in her chest. The golden light enveloped her and Kael, wrapping them in warmth and protection as they drew closer. "Together!" Rynn urged, her voice steady. "Channel the heart's energy!" Kael roared, his golden glow merging with the heart's light. The radiant energy surged around them, brightening the grove and pushing back the shadows. The creature howled in fury, its dark form flickering as the light struck true. But it wasn't finished yet. With a final surge of power, the beast lunged at them, its claws outstretched. Rynn braced herself, ready to defend Kael with everything she had. But just as the creature reached them, a blinding flash of golden light erupted from the heart, engulfing the grove in radiant energy. The shadows screamed as they were consumed, and the beast disintegrated into smoke, its form fading into the air. As the light faded, Rynn looked around, her breath catching in her throat. The grove was silent, the oppressive weight of darkness lifted. Kael stood beside her, his golden eyes wide with determination. He let out a soft trill, and Rynn felt a wave of relief wash over her. "We did it," she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thalos approached, his golden eyes scanning the now quiet grove. "For now," he said, his voice cautious. "But we need to prepare. Morvath's forces will return." Garrick nodded, his expression somber. "We can't let our guard down. The heart is still vulnerable." Tyla wiped her daggers clean, her sharp green eyes narrowing. "Let them come. We'll be ready." As the group gathered around the heart, the golden light pulsed gently, wrapping them in warmth and safety. Rynn felt a surge of determination as she looked at Kael, his glow steady and strong. Together, they would protect the wildlands and face whatever threats lay ahead. Chapter 9: The Bond of Light. The days that followed were filled with preparation. The group worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses around the heart, using the energy of the glowing tree to create wards and barriers that would keep Morvath's forces at bay. Rynn spent her time training with Kael, honing their bond, and learning to harness the heart's energy together. The young Wyvern had grown stronger, his golden glow more vibrant with each passing day. Their connection deepened, the light of the heart resonating with the trust they had built. "Focus, Kael," Rynn said during one of their training sessions, her voice steady as she guided him through the motions. "Feel the energy flowing through you." Kael chirped softly, his wings fluttering as he concentrated. The golden light surrounded him, pulsing in rhythm with the heart. "Good! Now channel it," Rynn urged, watching as Kael unleashed a burst of radiant energy that lit up the grove. The light cut through the shadows, illuminating the area around them. "Great job!" Rynn cheered, her heart swelling with pride. As they continued to train, Tyla and Garrick worked on reinforcing the barriers around the heart, their synergy growing as they forged tools and traps from the abundant resources in the grove. "We need to be ready for anything," Garrick said, his massive frame casting a long shadow as he hefted a makeshift barricade into place. "Morvath's forces will not give up easily." Tyla nodded, her sharp green eyes glinting. "And if they think they can take the heart from us, they've got another thing coming." Thalos remained a vigilant guardian, his golden eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. He spent his nights training with Rynn, teaching her how to wield her dagger with precision and grace. "You've come a long way," he said one evening as they practiced under the dim light of the heart. "But you still have much to learn." Rynn grinned, determination flooding her veins. "I won't stop until I'm ready." As the days turned into weeks, the grove thrived with renewed energy. The heart pulsed steadily, and the wildlands began to heal, the vibrant colors of life returning to the once barren landscape. But the threat of Morvath was always lingering in the back of their minds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Rynn sat with Kael beside the heart. She could feel the warmth radiating from it, the energy flowing through her as she stroked Kael's neck. "We're going to protect this place," she whispered, her voice filled with resolve. "No matter what happens." Kael chirped softly, his golden eyes meeting hers with unwavering trust. As night fell over the wildlands, the stars shimmered brightly in the sky. The grove settled into a peaceful silence, but Rynn couldn't shake the feeling that their time of peace was coming to an end. The next day, the horizon darkened as a storm rolled in, the air thick with tension. Rynn felt a shiver run down her spine as the first drops of rain began to fall. "Get ready!" Thalos shouted, his voice rising above the sound of the wind. "Morvath's forces are coming." Rynn's heart raced as she stood beside Kael. "We'll be ready," she said, her voice steady. As the storm raged around them, the group prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The heart pulsed brightly, its golden light cutting through the darkness as they braced themselves for the fight that lay ahead. Chapter 10. The Gathering Storm. The storm raged over the wildlands, dark clouds swirling ominously in the sky. The air crackled with energy, a palpable tension that set Rynn's fur on edge. She stood beside Kael, her heart racing as she prepared for the battle that was surely coming. "We've held them off before," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. "We can do it again." Kael let out a soft trill, his golden glow flickering but strong. He stood tall beside Rynn, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Thalos paced near the edge of the grove, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "They'll come for the heart," he said, his tone grave. "We need to be prepared for anything." Garrick moved to join him, his massive frame casting a long shadow. "We will protect it with our lives," he rumbled, hefting his warhammer as if to emphasize his point. Tyla stood nearby, her daggers gleaming in the dim light. "Whatever comes for us, they won't know what hit them," she said with a confident grin. A low growl echoed through the trees, cutting through the sound of the storm. Rynn turned to Kael, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Kyle's golden eyes narrowed, his wings fluttering slightly as he tensed beside her. The shadows began to shift, dark shapes coiling among the trees. "Get ready!" Thalos shouted, drawing his sword as he moved to the front of the group. "They're here!" The first wave of shadow wolves surged into the clearing, their glowing red eyes filled with malice. Rynn's heart raced as she gripped her dagger, her instincts kicking in. "Stand together!" Thalos commanded, his voice steady and commanding. The wolves lunged, snarling as they attacked. Thalos swung his sword with precision, cutting down the first beast that dared to approach. Garrick followed suit, his warhammer smashing into the ground and sending shockwaves through the earth. Rynn fought alongside Kael, her dagger flashing as she struck at the nearest wolf. Kael let out a fierce roar, his golden glow illuminating the clearing as he unleashed a burst of radiant energy. The light drove back the shadows, forcing the wolves to retreat momentarily. But the waves of darkness kept coming, more shadow beasts emerging from the depths of the forest. The air grew thick with tension as the group fought against the relentless tide. "Keep pushing!" Thalos shouted, slicing through another wolf. "We can't let them reach the heart." Kael's glow pulsed brightly as he unleashed another wave of radiant energy, and Rynn fought alongside him, her dagger cutting through the encroaching darkness. "Stay close!" Garrick bellowed, smashing his warhammer into another beast. "We can't let them surround us!" As the battle raged on, Rynn felt the weight of the wildlands pressing down on her, the shadows creeping closer. She could sense the presence of something larger lurking in the darkness, and it filled her with dread. "Rynn!" Thalos called, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to break through." "Where?" Rynn shouted back, her heart racing as she fought off another wolf. "Towards the heart," he said, gesturing toward the glowing tree in the distance. "It's our only chance." With a surge of determination, Rynn charged forward, Kael at her side. The heart pulsed with golden light, its energy wrapping around them like a protective shield. The shadow beasts howled in fury as they pressed closer, their glowing eyes locking onto the group. Rynn could feel the darkness closing in, but she refused to let fear take hold. "Together!" she shouted, her voice filled with resolve. Kael roared, his golden glow merging with the heart's light as they surged toward the tree. The radiant energy enveloped them, pushing back the shadows as they fought their way through. "Keep moving!" Thalos yelled, his blade cutting through the nearest wolf. "We can't let them stop us." The group pressed forward, their movements coordinated as they fought off the encroaching darkness. Kael unleashed another burst of radiant energy, illuminating the grove and scattering the shadows. But even as they fought, Rynn could feel the weight of Morvath's presence looming over them, like a storm ready to unleash its fury. As they reached the base of the heart, Rynn felt a surge of hope. "We can do this!" she shouted, turning to the others. Kael's glow pulsed brightly beside her, and Rynn felt the warmth of the heart's energy wrapping around them like a protective shield. For a moment, the shadows faltered, and the golden light of the heart surged with renewed intensity, illuminating the clearing and driving back the shadow beasts. Rynn felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew it wouldn't last long. "Now!" Thalos commanded, pushing forward with his sword raised. "Protect the heart at all costs." With Kael standing resolutely beside her, Rynn charged into the fray, her dagger flashing as she struck down one wolf after another. The radiant energy from the heart flowed through her, filling her with strength and purpose. Kael let out a fierce roar, unleashing another burst of golden light that engulfed the nearest shadow beasts. The force of the energy sent them tumbling back, their forms dissolving into smoke as they were consumed by the brightness.
"Keep going!" Garrick bellowed, swinging his warhammer with devastating force. He smashed into the ground, creating shockwaves that scattered the remaining wolves and gave the group a brief reprieve. But the relief was short-lived. From the depths of the forest, a massive shape emerged. A towering figure with dark fur and glowing red eyes. The tension in the air thickened as the ground trembled beneath its weight. "The Alpha!" Thalos said, his voice grim. "It's here!" Rynn's heart raced as the colossal shadow wolf stepped into the clearing, its presence casting a dark pall over the battlefield. The air crackled with dark energy as it locked its eyes on Kael, who stood defiantly beside Rynn. "Stay close!" Rynn shouted, positioning herself protectively in front of the Wyvern. "We can do this!" The Alpha let out a deep, guttural growl, its massive form towering over them. "You dare challenge the darkness that reigns here?" It snarled, its voice echoing like thunder. Kael's golden glow pulsed, and he let out a fierce roar in response. The energy from the heart surged around him, wrapping them in a protective cocoon of light. "Together!" Thalos shouted, his sword raised as he prepared to engage. "We hold the line!" The Alpha lunged forward, its powerful jaws snapping as it aimed for Kael. Rynn dove to the side, her dagger slashing at the beast's flank, but the creature barely flinched. "Garrick!" Thalos yelled, sprinting toward the Alpha. "Distract it while I flank!" Garrick charged forward with a roar, swinging his warhammer against the Alpha's massive foreleg. The impact shook the ground, but the beast snarled and turned its attention toward Garrick instead, snapping its jaws with deadly intent. Tyler darted in from the side, her daggers flashing as she aimed for the creature's exposed underbelly. The Alpha growled in fury, but just as it was about to retaliate, another burst of radiant energy erupted from Kael, striking the creature and pushing it back. "Good job, Kael!" Rynn shouted, her heart swelling with pride. The Alpha staggered, momentarily disoriented by the blast. Thalos seized the opportunity, lunging forward with his sword aimed for the beast's neck. The blade struck true, but the Alpha reared back, its dark energy swirling around it like a protective shield. "You think you can defeat me, little knight?" The Alpha snarled, its burning gaze fixed on Thalos. "I am the embodiment of the darkness you fear." "Then let's see how well you fight in the light!" Thalos shouted back, his voice steady and unyielding. With a fierce roar, Kael unleashed another wave of radiant energy, the golden light colliding with the Alpha's dark aura. The two forces clashed, sending shockwaves through the air as the grove trembled around them. "Now!" Thalos shouted, his eyes alight with determination. "Push forward!" The group surged as one, their movements coordinated as they pressed the attack. Rynn fought alongside Kael, her dagger flashing as she struck at the Alpha's legs while Kael unleashed wave after wave of radiant energy. The Alpha howled in fury, its dark energy flickering as it struggled to push back against the onslaught. But the combined strength of the group was too much. The light surged brighter, pushing the darkness further back. "Keep it up!" Garrick bellowed, swinging his warhammer with all his might. The weapon connected with the Alpha's side, sending it crashing to the ground with a deafening thud. Tyler darted in, her daggers flashing as she struck at the creature's exposed flank. "Let's finish this!" she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Rynn felt a surge of energy as Kael's go pulsed brightly. "We can do this!" she called, her voice steady and strong. "Together!" With one final powerful roar, Kael unleashed a torrent of radiant energy that engulfed the Alpha completely. The golden light consumed the shadowy form, and the creature let out a final anguished howl before dissolving into smoke. The grove fell silent, the oppressive weight of darkness lifting as the last remnants of the Alpha faded away. Rynn sank to her knees, her heart racing as she clutched Kael. "We did it!" she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. Kael chirped softly, his golden eyes shining with determination. Thalos lowered his sword, his golden gaze scanning the now quiet grove. "Morvath's forces awakened!" he said, his voice steady. "But we must remain vigilant. There may be more lurking in the shadows." Garrick nodded, his expression serious. "We can't let our guard down. The heart is still vulnerable." Tyler wiped her brow, her usual smirk returning. "Well, if they keep throwing monsters at us, I'd say we're in for a wild ride." Rynn looked at Kael, her heart swelling with pride. "We're not finished yet," she said firmly. As they caught their breath, the golden light of the heart pulsed in the distance, a reminder of their purpose. Together they would protect it and each other as they ventured deeper into the wildlands. Chapter 11. The Heart's Call. The days that followed were filled with preparation. The group worked tirelessly to fortify their defences around the hearth, using the energy of the glowing tree to create wards and barriers that would keep Morvath's forces at bay. Rynn spent her time training with Kael, honing their bond and learning to harness the heart's energy together. The young Wyvern had grown stronger, his golden glow more vibrant with each passing day. Their connection deepened, the light of the heart resonating with the trust they had built. "Focus, Kael," Rynn said during one of their training sessions, her voice steady as she guided him through the motions. "Feel the energy flowing through you." Kael chirped softly, his wings fluttering as he concentrated. The golden light surrounded him, pulsing in rhythm with the heart's energy, and Rynn felt the warmth wash over her, filling her with strength. "Good! Now try again," she encouraged, watching as Kael unleashed a burst of radiant energy that lit up the grove. "Great job!" Rynn cheered, her heart swelling with pride. As they continued to train, Tyler and Garrick worked on reinforcing the barriers around the heart, their synergy growing as they forged tools and traps from the abundant resources in the grove. "We need to be ready for anything," Garrick said, his massive frame casting a long shadow as he hefted a makeshift barricade into place. "Morvath's forces will not give up easily." "Then we protect him," Rynn said firmly, glancing at Kael. "Whatever it takes." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the grove, Thalos joined them, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to discuss our next move," he said, his tone serious. Rynn exchanged glances with the others, their expressions shifting from light-heartedness to determination. "What do you have in mind?" Tyler asked, her playful demeanour fading. Thalos stepped closer, holding the timekeeper's compass in his paw. The silver liquid within swirled, glowing brighter as it projected a faint image into the air. A towering tree wreathed in golden light, its roots spreading deep into the earth. "The heart of the wild," Thalos murmured. Rynn stared at the image, captivated. The tree seemed alive, its branches swaying as though caught in a gentle breeze. "What is it?" she asked. "A source of immense power," Thalos said. "One that's been hidden for centuries. If Kael has any chance of surviving, of learning to control his abilities, we need to find it." Rynn frowned. "That doesn't sound like a guarantee." "It's not," he admitted, tucking the compass away. "But it's the best we have." Kael stirred at the sound of their voices, lifting his head groggily. He let out a soft trill, blinking up at Rynn with those wide golden eyes. She crouched beside him, stroking his neck. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. "I promise." Thalos's voice cut through the moment. "Promises don't matter if we're dead. Let's move." As they left the grove and stepped into the cool night air, the village seemed even quieter than before. A few villagers watched from their windows, their expressions a mixture of fear and relief. Uncle Doran stood at the edge of the square, his arms crossed. When Rynn approached, he gave her a faint smile and handed her a bundle wrapped in cloth. "For the road," he said. "Bread, dried meat and flint. I threw in an extra set of tools just in case." Rynn swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thanks, Uncle." He rested a paw on her shoulder. "Be smart, Rynn, and stay alive. You're all I've got left." She nodded, her chest tightening. "I will." As she turned to leave, Kael chirped softly from her satchel, and Doran's gaze lingered on the wyvern. "Take care of him," he said quietly. "I will," Rynn promised. Thalos stood a few paces ahead, his cloak billowing slightly in the breeze. Without a word, she joined him, and together they stepped into the shadowy forest. Behind them, Embergrove faded into the darkness, its flickering lanterns like distant stars. As they walked, the timekeeper's compass glowed faintly in Thalos's hand, his rhythmic hum growing louder. And far away, beyond the forest and mountains, a pair of crimson eyes glimmered in the dark. Morvath smiled. Chapter 12. Into the Depths. The frost-bitten wind cut through Rynn's cloak, its bitter sting gnawing at her ears and nose. She pulled the fabric tighter, glancing over her shoulder at Kael, who trudged behind her. His small claws left faint marks in the snow, and his scales shimmered faintly under the pale light of the waxing moon. "How much farther?" she asked, her breath visible in the icy air. "Farther?" Thalos replied without looking back. His black cloak billowed behind him as he led the way, his boots crunching through the thick snow. Rynn rolled her eyes. "That's helpful." "Helpful or not, it's true," Thalos said. His voice was sharp, but exhaustion bled into his tone. "The tundra is vast. We'll be lucky to reach Glacium in 3 days, even if the weather holds." Kael chirped softly, his wings fluttering. He stumbled on a patch of ice and let out a frustrated growl, flaring his wings for balance. Rynn knelt beside him, brushing the snow off his claws. "You're doing great," she said gently, her breath warming his face. "Just a little longer, okay?" Kael nuzzled her hand before straightening up, the glow in his golden eyes flickering faintly. Behind her, Thalos sighed. "You're coddling him again." "He's tired," Rynn snapped, rising to her feet. "So am I, in case you hadn't noticed." "We're all tired," Thalos said, his gaze fixed ahead. "But tired won't matter if we're caught in a storm. Or worse." Rynn clenched her jaw, biting back a retort. She knew he was right. The cold was unforgiving, and they were only at the edge of the tundra. Ahead of them, the horizon stretched into a blur of white and grey, the distant mountains barely visible through the falling snow. Kael let out a soft trill, and Rynn placed a reassuring hand on his neck. "We'll make it," she murmured. But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at the edges of her thoughts. The first sign of trouble came at dusk. They had set up a small camp in the lee of a rocky outcrop, using the stone to shield themselves from the worst of the wind. Thalos worked in silence, sharpening his blade while Rynn tried to coax a fire from their dwindling supply of kindling. Kael lay curled beside her, his scales reflecting the flickering light of the flames. His breathing was steady, but his wings twitched occasionally, as though caught in a dream. "He's restless," Rynn said, glancing at Thalos. Because he senses something," Thalos replied. "We all should." Rynn frowned. "What do you mean?" Thalos gestured toward the snowy ground around them. "No tracks, no movement, but the air feels wrong, as though the shadows themselves are waiting to pounce." Kael stirred, lifting his head and sniffing the air. A low growl rumbled in his throat, and his golden eyes glowed faintly. "Say," Thalos said, his voice tight. "Even he knows." Rynn stepped closer to Kael, her fingers brushing his scales. If something's out there, shouldn't we keep moving? Thalos shook his head. Not until we're sure. Moving blindly will only get us cornered. Before Rynn could argue, a sharp crack echoed through the clearing. Both of them turned as Kael leapt off the log, his wings flaring. The ground beneath him had splintered, a faint scorch mark spreading outward like a spider's web. "Kael," Rynn said, stepping toward him. The Wyvern's eyes glowed faintly, his chest rising and falling in short, panicked breaths. The air around him seemed to shimmer, waves of heat distorting the grass. "Stay back," Thalos ordered, his paw moving to the hilt of his sword. "No!" Rynn snapped, positioning herself between them. She crouched in front of Kael, her voice low and soothing. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." Kael's trembling slowed at the sound of her voice, his glowing eyes dimming as he leaned into her touch. The heat dissipated, leaving only the faint scorch marks as evidence. "Kael!" Rynn exclaimed, panic rising in her chest. "What's wrong?" "His power," Thalos said grimly. "He's not in control." Kael let out a low growl, his wings shuddering as he struggled to regain his composure. Rynn could feel the heat radiating off him, the energy coursing through his body like a live wire. "Kael," Rynn said gently, her heart aching at the sight of him struggling. "You're okay. Just breathe." The young wyvern chirped softly, his golden eyes locking onto hers as he tried to calm himself. Rynn could see the uncertainty flickering in his gaze, the weight of the wildlands pressing down on him. Thalos shifted beside her, his expression a mix of concern and urgency. "We need to keep moving," he said. "We can't afford to let Morvath's forces catch up to us." Rynn nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then let's go." As they packed up their camp, Rynn stayed close to Kael, her heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. The wildlands were fraught with danger and she didn't want to lose him. "Thalos," she said, glancing at the night as they resumed their journey. "What do we do if Morvath's forces find us again?" "We fight," Thalos replied, his voice steady. "But we'll be ready this time." Rynn felt a surge of determination. They had faced darkness together, and they would continue to do so. The group pressed on, the shadows growing longer as the sun sank below the horizon. The air felt charged with energy, and Rynn couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond their sight. As they climbed a steep hill, Rynn paused to catch her breath. She turned to Kael, who was struggling to keep up. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern flooding her voice. Kael let out a soft trill, his golden eyes locking onto hers. He was tired, but he was still with her. "Just a little longer," she urged, gently nudging him forward. "We can do this together." As they reached the top of the hill, the landscape spread out before them. A vast expanse of jagged rocks and twisted trees, the remnants of Morvath's corruption. The heart pulsed faintly in the distance, its golden glow a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. "We're almost there," Thalos said, his voice filled with determination. "But we have to be ready for anything." As they descended the hill, the shadows stirred and a low growl echoed through the air. Rynn's heart raced as she turned to Kael, who was tensing beside her. "Stay close," she whispered, her grip tightening on her dagger. The growling grew louder, and from the darkness, a massive shape emerged, a hulking beast with dark fur and glowing red eyes. It was a shadow beast, larger than any they had faced before. "Get ready!" Thalos shouted, drawing his sword. Rynn stood her ground, her heart pounding as Kael let out a fierce roar. The golden glow surged around them, pushing back the darkness. The battle began anew, the shadows closing in around them. Rynn fought alongside her friends, determined to protect Kael and the heart at all costs. As the fight raged on, Rynn felt a surge of hope. They had come too far to let darkness take them now. Chapter 13. The Heart's Embrace. The battle against the shadow beasts raged on, the air thick with the scent of smoke and the sounds of growling and snarling. Rynn fought with all her might, her dagger flashing as she struck at the nearest creature. Kael stood beside her, his golden glow illuminating the chaos as he unleashed waves of radiant energy. The light surged through the clearing, driving back the shadows and scattering the dark forms. "Keep pressing forward!" Thalos shouted, his sword cutting through a beast with precision. "We need to reach the heart!" Garrick swung his warhammer, sending another beast tumbling backward. "We're nearly there!" he bellowed. "Just a little further!" Rynn could feel the heat of Kael's energy radiating beside her, a comforting warmth against the chill of the wildlands. With every strike, every roar from Kael, the shadows retreated just a little more. She focused on the task at hand, her breath steady despite the chaotic surroundings. "Kael!" she shouted, urging him forward. "Let's push them back together!" With a fierce roar, Kael unleashed another torrent of radiant energy, the golden light engulfing several of the shadow beasts. They howled in pain as the light consumed them, dissolving into wisps of darkness that faded into nothingness. "Good job!" Rynn cheered, her heart swelling with pride. "Keep it up!" But even as the light burned away the shadows, more were emerging from the depths of the forest. The growls grew louder, and Rynn felt the weight of the darkness pressing in again. "Tyler! Garrick! We need to get to the heart!" Thalos called, slicing through another beast that lunged at him. "We've got to fight our way through!" Tyler shouted back, her daggers flashing as she struck at the nearest creature. "This is getting out of hand!" Garrick swung his warhammer again, sending another beast flying with a powerful blow. "We can't let them surround us!" Rynn pressed closer to Kael, who let out a fierce growl, his golden glow flickering as he summoned more energy. "Stay close!" she urged, her heart pounding as the shadows closed in. The ground shook beneath them, and Rynn's stomach dropped as she realized something was coming. From the depths of the forest, a massive figure emerged, a hulking beast with dark fur and glowing red eyes. It was larger than any shadow beast they had encountered, its presence radiating an aura of darkness that sent shivers down Rynn's spine. "The Alpha?" Thalos growled, his golden eyes narrowing. "It's come to finish what Morvath started." "Great!" Tyler muttered, her usual bravado faltering. "What's it going to do? Eat us?" "Get ready to fight!" Garrick shouted, raising his warhammer. "We hold the line!" The Alpha let out a deep, guttural growl, and the shadows around it surged forward, twisting and writhing like living things. Rynn felt her heart race as she prepared for the fight of their lives. "Kael, we need you!" Rynn shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Kael stepped forward, his golden glow flaring as he prepared to unleash his radiant energy. "Together!" Rynn urged, determined to face the darkness head-on. The Alpha lunged at Thalos, who managed to sidestep the massive beast, slicing at its flank with his sword. The blade connected, but the Alpha barely flinched, its glowing red eyes fixed on the night. "Rynn! Cover Kael!" Thalos shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Rynn moved to protect Kael, standing firm as the shadow beast surged around them. She slashed at the nearest creature, her dagger biting into the smoky form. Kael let out a fierce roar, unleashing a wave of radiant energy that lit up the grove and sent the shadow beasts reeling. But the Alpha was relentless. It lunged at Rynn, its massive jaws snapping dangerously close. She ducked just in time, rolling to the side as the beast's claws raked the ground where she had stood. "Rynn, don't engage it directly," Thalos yelled, his voice filled with urgency. "I'm trying," she shot back, scrambling to her feet. "But it's not giving me a choice." The alpha bared its teeth, and Rynn could see the dark energy swirling around it like a storm. Kael fluttered his wings, the golden glow around him pulsing brighter as he prepared for another attack. "Kael, now!" Rynn urged. With a fierce roar, Kael unleashed a torrent of radiant energy that struck the alpha square in the chest. The light burned brightly, forcing the creature back and illuminating the grove in a warm glow. Rynn took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We can do this!" she shouted, charging forward with her dagger raised. Kael surged alongside her, his golden glow illuminating the battlefield. The alpha staggered, its dark energy flickering as it struggled against the radiant force. "Together!" Thalos bellowed, charging at the creature. He aimed for the alpha's leg, his sword cutting deep into its flesh. Garrick followed suit, swinging his warhammer with all his might. The impact sent the alpha crashing to the ground, but the creature fought back, its claws raking the air as it struggled to rise. "Don't let it get up," Tyler shouted, darting in to strike at the alpha's exposed flank. With every ounce of strength they had, the group pressed the attack. Rynn felt the warmth of Kael's energy beside her, and for the first time, she truly believed they could win. "Now!" Thalos shouted, his voice filled with urgency. Kael unleashed another burst of radiant energy, the light engulfing the alpha completely. The shadow beast let out a final anguished roar before dissolving into smoke, leaving only silence in its wake. The grove fell still, the oppressive weight of darkness lifted as the last remnants of the creature faded away. Rynn sank to her knees, her heart racing. "We did it!" she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. Kael chirped softly, his golden eyes shining with determination. Thalos sheathed his sword, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "But we need to prepare. Morvath's forces will return." Garrick nodded, his expression sombre. "We can't let our guard down. The heart is still vulnerable." Tyler wiped her brow, her usual smirk returning. "Let them come. We'll be ready." As the group gathered around Kael, the golden light of the heart began to pulse gently once more. It was a reminder of their purpose, a symbol of hope in the face of darkness. Rynn looked at Kael, her heart swelling with pride. "Together, we'll protect this place," she said softly. The heart pulsed brighter as if echoing her resolve. Chapter 14. The Reckoning. The following days were filled with a mix of preparation and determination. The wildlands continued to heal, vibrant colours breaking through the once barren landscape. Rynn spent her time training with Kael, deepening their bond and learning to harness the heart's energy together. But the shadow of Morvath lingered in the air like a dark cloud, a constant reminder that their fight wasn't over. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rynn sat at the base of the heart, running her fingers over Kael's smooth scales. "What do you think is next?" she asked softly, glancing up at him. Kael chirped softly, his golden eyes blinking as he leaned into her touch. "Do you think we'll face Morvath again?" Rynn asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Kael let out a low growl, his wings fluttering slightly as he stood tall beside her. "Thalos is right," Rynn said, her determination solidifying. "We have to be ready for anything." As if on cue, Thalos approached, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. "We need to discuss our next steps," he said, his voice serious. "Morvath's forces will not rest. We need to gather allies." Garrick nodded, his brow furrowed. "The other clans in the region will need to know what's happening. If we can unite them, we may stand a chance. Tyler leaned back against a tree, her expression contemplative. What if they refuse? Not everyone is willing to fight. Then we persuade them, Thalos replied, his tone unwavering. But we cannot afford to be divided. Morvath will take advantage of that weakness. Rynn took a deep breath, determination flooding her veins. We'll convince them. We've faced darkness together and we can show them that they're stronger united. The group began to formulate their plan, discussing which clans they would approach first and how best to win their support. The heart pulsed steadily behind them, a constant reminder of their purpose. As the days turned into weeks, they set off into the wildlands, Kael leading the way with his golden glow illuminating their path. Rynn felt a surge of hope as they moved closer to their goal, the promise of a united front against Morvath flickering like a flame in her heart. But the shadows were never far behind. Chapter 15. Allies in the Shadows. The sun rose over the wildlands, casting long shadows across the landscape as Rynn and her group made their way toward the nearest clan territory. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of damp earth and blooming flora. Kael walked proudly at Rynn's side, his golden glow steady and bright. "We're almost there," Rynn said, glancing at Thalos, who was leading the way. His golden eyes remained sharp, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. "Stay alert," Thalos warned. "The clans have their own agendas. We cannot assume they will welcome us with open arms." Garrick nodded, his massive form casting a long shadow. Many still fear Morvath's influence, and some may not trust a Wildborn. Tyler rolled her eyes. "Well, that's just fantastic. Nothing like a little prejudice to spice things up." "Let's focus on the task at hand," Thalos said, his tone firm. "We need to make our case clearly and quickly." As they approached the border of the clan territory, Rynn felt her heart race. The trees grew denser, their twisted branches forming a natural barrier around the entrance. Faint sounds of chatter reached her ears, voices mingling with the rustling leaves. "Stay close," Thalos said, leading them toward the edge of the clearing. "We'll present ourselves and hope for a warm welcome." As they stepped into the clearing, Rynn's eyes widened at the sight before her. The clan's encampment was bustling with activity. Foxes, badgers, and other woodland creatures moved about, tending to their tasks. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and the sounds of laughter. But the moment the group stepped forward, the chatter died down. Eyes turned toward them, filled with curiosity and suspicion. "Who are you?" a voice called from the crowd. A tall fox stepped forward, his fur a vibrant orange under the sunlight. He crossed his arms, his expression serious. "What brings you to our territory?" Thalos took a step forward, his golden eyes unwavering. "We seek your help. Morvath's forces are rising again, and we need to unite against the darkness." The fox's expression remained skeptical. "And why should we trust you? You bring a Wildborn among you. You're playing a dangerous game." Rynn stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "Because the Wildborn carries the heart's power," she said, her voice steady. "Kael is our ally, and we're fighting to protect the wildlands." The fox studied her for a long moment, his eyes flickering between Rynn and Kael. "You expect us to believe that? After everything Morvath has done?" "Believe what you will," Thalos said, his voice calm but firm. "But if we don't act together, we will fall one by one." A murmur spread through the crowd, uncertainty rippling among the clan members. "Enough!" the fox called, raising a paw to silence the chatter. "If what you say is true, then you may yet prove useful. But do not expect our trust easily." Thalos nodded, his gaze steady. "We understand. but we need your support. Morvath's forces will not stop until they reclaim the heart." "And what do we get in return?" the fox asked, his tone challenging. "The promise of safety," Rynn said, stepping forward. "If we stand together, we can protect our homes. The heart's power can help heal the wildlands, but it needs guardians." The fox's gaze flickered to Kael, who stood beside Rynn, his golden glow pulsing steadily. "You put a lot of faith in a creature others would call a monster," he said. "Do you truly believe it can help us?" "I know it can," Rynn replied, her voice filled with conviction. "Kael has already proven it in battle. He's not just a Wildborn, he's our hope." The fox looked around at the gathered clan members, weighing their options. "Very well," he said finally. "We will hear you out, but know this. If you betray us, we will not hesitate to act." "Fair enough," Thalos said, his expression resolute. As they moved deeper into the encampment, Rynn felt a flicker of hope. They had taken the first step toward uniting against Morvath, and with Kael by her side, she believed they could face whatever darkness lay ahead. Chapter 16. The Council of Shadows. The clan gathered around a large bonfire, the flickering flames casting long shadows across the clearing. Rynn stood beside Kael, her heart racing as she felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her. The tall fox who had confronted them earlier stood at the head of the gathering, his expression serious. "You've come to us with a dire warning, and we will hear you out." He gestured for Thalos to speak. Thalos stepped forward, his golden eyes scanning the gathered clan members. "Morvath's forces are rising again. They will not stop until they reclaim the heart of the wild. We need to unite against this threat before it's too late." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Rynn felt the tension in the air. The fox raised a paw to silence them. "And why should we trust you? The last time we faced Morvath, we lost everything." "Because we're stronger together," Rynn said, her voice steady. "Kael is not just a Wildborn. He is our ally. With the heart's power flowing through him, we can protect our homes." The fox's gaze flickered to Kael, who stood tall beside Rynn, his golden glow pulsing steadily. "And what makes you think he won't become a danger to us all?" "Because I believe in him," Rynn said, her voice filled with conviction. "He's already proven his strength and loyalty. He fought beside us against Velrax and the Shadow Beasts. He's not the enemy." The fox studied her for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. "You speak with passion, girl, but passion does not win battles." "No," Thalos interjected, stepping forward. "But strength does. If we can unite the clans, we can stand against Morvath's forces. We can protect the heart and the wildlands." "It will take more than just words," Garrick said, his voice low but firm. "We need a plan. We cannot afford to lose anyone else." The fox nodded, his expression serious. "Agreed, but we need to know what you're asking of us. What will you do if Morvath returns?" Rynn felt the weight of their eyes on her. "We'll fight," she said, her voice steady. "We won't let the darkness take the heart again. We'll protect it with everything we have." A murmur spread through the crowd, and the fox looked around at his clan members. "Very well. If we are to stand with you, we need to be prepared. We will gather our warriors and prepare for the fight to come." Rynn felt a surge of hope. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Together, we can make a difference." As the gathering began to disperse, Thalos stepped closer to Rynn and Kael. "This is just the beginning," he said, his tone serious. "We have much to do before Morvath returns." "Let's do it," Rynn replied, determination flooding her veins. Kael chirped softly, leaning into her touch as the golden glow of the heart pulsed in the distance. Together, they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. Chapter 17. The Final Preparations. The days that followed were filled with activity as the clans united against Morvath's forces. Rynn found herself at the forefront of the efforts, working alongside Thalos, Garrick and Tyler to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The heart pulsed steadily in the distance, its golden light a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. Rynn and Kael trained together every day, learning to harness the radiant energy that flowed from the heart. "Focus, Kael," Rynn said, her voice steady as she guided him through their training exercises. "Channel the energy, don't just unleash it." Kael chirped softly, his wings fluttering as he concentrated. The golden light surrounded him, pulsing in rhythm with the heart's energy. "Good! Now try again," Rynn encouraged, watching as Kael unleashed a powerful burst of radiant energy. The light illuminated the clearing, driving back the shadows and filling her with hope. As they trained, the other clan members prepared for battle. Tyler and Garrick worked tirelessly to fortify their defences, setting traps and creating barriers to protect the heart from Morvath's forces. "We need to be ready for anything," Garrick said, his voice low but steady. "Morvath will not take our homes without a fight." Tyler nodded, her sharp green eyes glinting. "And if he thinks we're going to roll over, he's got another thing coming." Rynn felt a surge of determination as she watched her friends work. They had come together as a united front, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. As the day of the confrontation approached, Rynn gathered with Thalos, Garrick and Tyler to discuss their final strategy. "We'll meet at the edge of the wildlands," Thalos said, his golden eyes scanning the gathered clan members. "Once we locate Morvath's forces, we'll strike quickly and decisively." "And what if they have more shadow beasts?" Tyler asked, her tone serious. "We can't afford to be overwhelmed again." "We'll fight smarter," Thalos replied, his voice firm. "Kael's energy can drive back the darkness. If we can keep him protected, we'll have a fighting chance." Rynn nodded, her heart racing. "We'll protect him, whatever it takes." As night fell over the wildlands, the group prepared for battle. The air was thick with tension, and the golden light of the heart pulsed gently behind them, a reminder of their purpose. Kael stood proudly beside Rynn, his golden glow illuminating the path ahead. She felt a surge of hope as they moved closer to their goal, the promise of a united front against Morvath flickering like a flame in her heart. "Let's finish this," Rynn said, determination flooding her veins. And as they stepped into the shadows, the final confrontation awaited them. Chapter 18. The Confrontation. The air was thick with tension as Rynn and her group navigated through the dense underbrush of the wildlands, the dark shadows of the trees looming over them like ancient sentinels. The heart pulsed gently in the distance, its golden light a beacon guiding them toward their inevitable confrontation with Morvath. "Stay sharp," Thalos warned, his golden eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of trouble. Morvath's forces could be lurking anywhere. Rynn tightened her grip on Kael's harness, feeling the warmth of his body next to hers. The young wyvern's golden glow flickered, and she could sense his unease. "We'll be okay," she whispered, stroking his neck. "We have each other." Kael chirped softly, his golden eyes locking onto hers with trust. As the group reached a clearing, they paused to catch their breath. The air crackled with a palpable energy, and Rynn could feel the weight of Morvath's presence looming in the distance. She glanced at Thalos, who was studying the timekeeper's compass intently. "It's pointing directly toward the heart of the wildlands," he said, his voice low. "That's where we'll find him." "Then let's not waste any time," Rynn said, her determination solidifying. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, pushing away the remnants of fear. As they moved deeper into the wildlands, the oppressive atmosphere grew heavier, the shadows closing in around them. The trees seemed to whisper secrets in the wind, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Rynn's heart raced as they approached the heart of the forest, knowing the final confrontation was imminent. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a chill down Rynn's spine. The shadows shifted ominously, and she felt the air grow cold around them. "Get ready!" Thalos commanded, drawing his sword. "Morvath's forces are near!" Rynn positioned herself protectively in front of Kael, her dagger gleaming in the dim light. "Stay close, Kael," she whispered, trying to reassure him. The growling intensified, and from the depths of the shadows emerged a pack of shadow wolves, their glowing red eyes fixed on the group. They moved with an eerie grace, their forms flickering as if they were made of smoke. "Here we go again," Tyler muttered, her daggers already in hand. "I was hoping for a moment's peace." "Think of it as training," Garrick said, hefting his warhammer. "We'll show them we're not to be trifled with." As the wolves lunged, Thalos charged forward, his sword flashing as he struck the first creature that attacked. The blade sliced through the shadowy form, sending the wolf tumbling into a cloud of black mist. "Keep pushing!" Thalos shouted, his voice echoing through the clearing. Rynn fought alongside Kael, her dagger flashing as she struck at the nearest wolf. Kael unleashed a burst of radiant energy, illuminating the area around them and driving back the shadows. "Good job!" Rynn called, feeling a surge of pride as Kael pushed the darkness away. But the wolves were relentless. For every one they struck down, 2 more seemed to take its place. Rynn felt her energy waning, the weight of exhaustion pressing against her as the fight wore on. "We have to keep moving," Thalos shouted, cutting down another wolf. "The heart is close." "Right!" Rynn yelled, determination flooding her veins as she pressed forward, Kael at her side. As they fought their way through the pack, the shadows began to retreat, the wolves howling in frustration. But Rynn knew they couldn't let their guard down. Morvath's presence loomed over them like a storm cloud, and she could feel the darkness gathering. "Are we getting close?" Tyler shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Very," Thalos replied, his golden eyes locked onto the horizon. "Keep pushing. We can't let them stop us now." The group surged forward, their movements coordinated as they pressed the attack. Kael's golden glow illuminated the path ahead, pushing back the shadows as they fought their way toward the heart. As they reached the edge of a vast clearing, the heart came into view, its massive trunk glowing with golden light. The energy radiating from it felt like a warm embrace, wrapping around them and filling them with hope. But as they stepped into the clearing, a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the air. "Foolish mortals!" Morvath growled, his towering figure emerging from the shadows. "You think you can claim the heart for yourselves?" Rynn's heart raced as she faced the Dark Lord. His antlers crackled with dark energy, and his crimson eyes burned like fire. "You've come far, but this is where your journey ends." "Not if we have anything to say about it!" Thalos shouted, stepping forward with his sword raised. Kael growled beside Rynn, his golden glow pulsing as he prepared to unleash his power. Morvath's laughter echoed through the clearing, deep and resonant. "You think you can stop me, little Wyvern? I am the darkness that consumes all!" With a swift motion, Morvath summoned a wave of shadows that surged toward the group, dark tendrils coiling and wrapping around them like chains. Rynn felt the weight of the darkness pressing against her, threatening to pull her under. "Fight it!" Thalos commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can't let him overwhelm us!" Rynn gritted her teeth, channeling her determination as she stood her ground against the shadows. "Kael, we need to push back," she shouted. The young wyvern let out a fierce roar, his golden glow flaring as he unleashed a torrent of radiant energy. The light collided with Morvath's shadows, pushing back against the darkness. The two forces clashed in a blinding explosion of light and shadow, sending shockwaves through the clearing. Rynn shielded her eyes, feeling the warmth of Kael's energy envelop her as they fought together against the encroaching darkness. "Now!" Thalos shouted, charging forward. "We strike while he's vulnerable." The group surged forward, their weapons raised as they pressed the attack. Kael unleashed another wave of radiant energy, illuminating the clearing in golden light. Morvath snarled, his crimson eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot defeat me!" he roared, summoning more shadows to his side. But Rynn felt the heart's energy coursing through her, filling her with strength and purpose. "We can, and we will!" she shouted, her voice steady and fierce. As the battle raged on, Rynn fought alongside her friends, the bond between them stronger than ever. Kael roared with determination, his golden glow illuminating the darkness as they pressed forward. With one final surge of power, Kael unleashed a torrent of radiant energy that engulfed Morvath, pushing back the shadows and illuminating the clearing in blinding light. The Dark Lord staggered, his form flickering as the light consumed the darkness around him. "No, this cannot be!" he roared, his voice filled with desperation. Rynn felt a surge of hope as they drove Morvath back, the shadows retreating before the golden light. "Together!" she shouted, rallying the group as they pressed forward. As they reached the heart of the clearing, the golden glow of the heart pulsed brightly, wrapping them in warmth as they stood united against the darkness. With one final push, Kael unleashed a burst of radiant energy that consumed Morvath completely. The Dark Lord let out a final howl of fury before dissolving into smoke, leaving only silence in his wake. As the light faded, Rynn stood panting, her heart racing with both relief and disbelief. "Did we do it?" she whispered, looking around at her friends. Thalos lowered his sword, his golden eyes scanning the area. "For now," he said, his voice steady. "But we need to remain vigilant. Morvath may be gone, but his influence lingers." Garrick nodded, his expression somber. "The shadows may still hold power. We need to ensure they don't return." Tyler wiped her brow, her sharp green eyes glinting. "Well, if they think they can take the heart again, they've got another thing coming." Rynn looked down at Kael, who stood proudly beside her, his golden eyes shining with determination. "Together, we'll protect this place," she promised, her voice filled with conviction. The heart pulsed gently behind them, a reminder of their purpose and the bond they had forged. As the sun began to rise over the wildlands, the group gathered, preparing to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had fought against darkness and emerged victorious, but the journey was far from over. With Kael by her side, Rynn felt a surge of hope. They would continue to fight for the heart, for the wildlands, and for each other. The adventure was just beginning.